We had a burn rate of, I believe it was 12 million a month in September of 2000. By September of 2001, we turned the dial enough. The company was basically at break even. And that's when we started the whole IPO process, which, as Max went ahead to the end, was, at the end of the day, very successful. There were certainly many crazy ups and downs in between. The most insane one, we filed for going public September 28th, 2001. We were the first company to do so after September 11th. And I thought this would be a cool thing to do because nobody else would be doing it. The unfortunate downside was that we got way more scrutiny than we otherwise would have. It started with the SEC, with our bad luck on the draw, where we drew a very short straw. One of the questions in the SEC is who actually reviews these companies. And it turned out to be there was one person at the SEC who was ideologically opposed to companies. And he thought that all companies in the US were run by crooks. And it was his job as an SEC regulator to prevent companies from ever going public. And normally what would happen if you had the bad luck of getting this SEC regulator to review you, it would be a very long process, and eventually his supervisors would override him. But there were all these scandals with other companies, and there were people who started thinking, maybe this guy's been right all these 20 years, and maybe no company should be allowed to go public anymore in the US. And so one of the crazy things that happened in the last month was there was a Business Week article written on us, which in January of '02, which said PayPal is a great business, but it unfortunately has all these banking regulatory problems. In particular, it's unclear what the regulatory status is in Louisiana, Idaho, New York, and California. And there was this one mid-level bureaucrat in Louisiana who said, well, we don't know what they're doing, but if they're involved in unregulated banking, they have to stop. And then the guy at the SEC read the article and called up the state of Louisiana, and then he called us up and announced to us, well, you have to disclose that you've been shut down from doing business in Louisiana. And this led to quite a panic because it was a whole network. And even though Louisiana was not that important a state, if we were stopped in Louisiana, people might think that we'd be stopped in a lot of other places. And so on the eve of the IPO, behind the scenes, there was this frantic effort to be authorized to do business in Louisiana. This was in the middle of Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and I still think it was. I managed to track down in the middle of Mardi Gras the ex-banking commissioner of Louisiana. We sort of talked about this, and he agreed that Louisiana didn't really want to. We pointed out we had 100,000 customers in Louisiana. They were using the product 3,000 times a day. Did they really want to deal with all these people who did, after all, vote in elections in Louisiana? And he agreed that, maybe Louisiana didn't really want to get a reputation as an unusually backward state, and perhaps they should revisit this. And so, the morning after Mardi Gras was over, we were back allowed to do business in Louisiana officially, and the company successfully went public about a week later. So all these things are like layers and layers, twists and turns.
Right. Actually, so I have to tell one more story as well from the IPO. So the last few days, or the last month before the IPO, is basically this insane race, which primarily played out at this place called the Printers, which is where you print these things called the red herring, I guess, is the jargon for it. But it's really a prospectus. What it is, it's a collection of information about the company, mostly stating things like, we could go out of business. We're really a risky proposition. You probably don't want to put money into this company. Don't buy our stock. No, you really don't mean to buy our stock. It's like 90 pages worth of this crap. And you have to send it out to all prospective investors, and they have to look at it, and it's tightly regulated by SEC, and it's really all about not getting people to invest in your company. But you still have to do it. It's because it's the law. On the night of so we've had this perpetually sliding date of the IPO. On the night before one of these dates, we find out that we've just been sued. And not just been sued for, my lack of shaving or something like that. We've actually been sued for patent infringement, which usually the way it works is that you get a notice, somebody tells you cease and desist, then they want to negotiate, then they go out and try to extort you for money. Patent infringement is all about extortion. They just come in and say, look, we have a patent, you have a product, you have $1 million, we have no money, hand it to us, or we'll take you to the cleaners in court.
And the IPO is normally a good time because it's very time sensitive, so you're normally just willing to write a check real quickly to make them go away.
But these guys actually screwed up their ransoming strategy because they came in too late. So they came in.
They initially sent it to the wrong place.
Yeah, they sent the initial extortion letter to the wrong address. Then they called us up. We were pretty much locked and loaded. We're going to go public no matter what. We were all pissed off and been up for a couple of days. These guys are basically saying, look, here's a chopped up baby. Now pay the ransom. because by this point, we didn't need the baby anymore. We really didn't care. So we said, screw it. You can sue us all you want. We don't mind. And they did. The Underwriters Council said, look, you can't go public because the SEC examiner isn't going to let you go public unless you have at least one opinion from a reputable law firm saying you're not infringing. You want at least something like that in the prospectus because no one's going to buy your stock. So my friend Dan Bonet, who teaches at Stanford, he is a very, very good cryptography professor at this fine institution, who was also a very, very early on advisor and a personal friend of mine, and I stayed up another all-nighter going through the patent, which we've never seen before, trying to figure out exactly how I kid you not, telephone network of credit card payments for, basically it sounded like a patent on 1-900 services. But it was obviously written in legalese, so you really couldn't tell exactly what it was. It had nothing to do with PayPal. We had to convince a lawyer the next morning, which neither of us had ever met, that the two are really very different. So we pulled this crazy all-nighter. The next morning, this lawyer flying from Los Angeles, who I'd never met, who'd never seen the patent, had never met me, who'd never heard about the company, trying to help me convince another lawyer somewhere else that the whole thing is really, just hand wave it off. It really came to a very heated conversation. I fired the lawyer while he was in the room, broke all the ranks, tried to convince the Underwriters Council that we're OK, and miraculously enough, they actually bought it. And later on, obviously, this lawsuit never went anywhere. PayPal was really not infringing anything, but the extortion completely failed. So that may sound sort of nutty, and I hope I gave enough color to it, but it was really, really nutty at the time. This was just one of maybe 10 stories like that all occurred the week before IPO. So the IPO party is basically a massive blur in my mind. All I remember is just having a bottle of champagne and a cigar, and then I woke up. And I think the same goes for most people at the company, actually. But I will publicly repeat this again and again. The day PayPal went public was the happiest day of my life, and I'm yet to have a happier moment so far. But hopefully, I'll top it with the next one.